Let me ask you, I'm going to put him devil's advocate because I am here with other journalists and I don't want to be seen as being, you know, too soft. Although I do feel like I'm getting softer in my old age. But
we all are.
If I were to play devil's advocate, and again, to preface this, you know, with the caveat that I appreciate what it is, what is the stakes of what the brothers encountered and their lives, and I don't in any way mean to take away from that. That said, what about the concerns of those who argue, not the least of which is the one prosecutor, the woman prosecutor, who said, hey, you know, they were adults. They were not, you know, they were old enough to drive away, to extract themselves from that situation. They could have taken other actions rather than killing their parents. What do you say to those who say if these brothers are released, what would stop similar cases from, you know, from this kind of similar outcomes, and kind of could we just be a society in which it's just the justices meted out that way?
I think that the number 1 and 2 questions I'm always asked. Number 1 is they were 18 and 21 National Olympic tennis players. Why didn't they just walk out the front door? Number 2 question I'm asked is, okay, maybe their father was a monster. Maybe he was a bad person. But what about their mother? Because we believe that all mothers are loving and nurturing. So the answer to question number 1, why didn't they walk out the front door? I've spoken to a number of therapy experts over the years, and they've explained to me that it was like Erik and Lyle were living in a tunnel. They couldn't imagine life without their parents. Their parents had made them totally dependent on them. For example, they did their homework for the brothers, and it didn't take teachers long to realize the homework was always pristine, and then they'd take quizzes in class and fail. And the number 2 question is, what about their mother? And there was a line that Leslie Abrahamson had in her closing argument at the first trial, which was that Jose and Kitty Menendez ran boot camp Beverly Hills, and Kitty was one of the guards, not one of the prisoners.
I think we have to understand, we have to look at those questions with the lens of what we know today as far as PTSD and how people react after years of abuse, right? Their brains were altered as a result of those years. And so they made choices that you and I maybe sitting here wouldn't make, right? We know now, we understand now the science behind trauma and how it affects actions.
And I think, too, it's interesting to think about, I think about myself when I saw in one of the documentaries, it talked about the SNL skit with Will Ferrell, and how the reaction, one of the things that the prosecution did during the first trial was kind of made the case that this was all an act, in that it was just, and I think that people, speaking, I guess I should just speak for myself. At that time in my life, at that age, I just was not as attuned to child sex abuse as you are today, and aware of what it really means, and of young boys being victimized. So I certainly can appreciate that.
I think that society was very different 30 years ago when Erik and Lyle Menendez went on trial the first time. There was no internet, there was no social media. So in high-profile cases, the mainstream media would set a log line, a summary of what the story was. And the story about Erik and Lyle was 2 greedy rich kids killed Ozzie and Harriet on a Sunday night in Beverly Hills. And that was never the real story.
Robert, with regard to TikTok and all that has happened in this case, am I going to walk out of here being more of a proponent of social media? Could this actually happen? Can you speak to that? I mean, it's
Sure.
a very interesting perspective.
In the fall of 2020, my son, who was 14 years old at the time, came to me one afternoon and he said, "Dad, TikTok is full of Menendez Brothers videos. And I laughed. And then I went down the rabbit hole for the next 3 hours. And I saw this building over a period of months. And I called up a friend of mine who was a senior editor at the New York Times. And I said, I think this is a story. And they did do a story in February 21 about the new social media supporters for Erik and Lyle Menendez. And that set off some TV shows. And that really was the appetizer for what's happening right now. That there is now a huge community, and more than half of the supporters of Erik and Lyle Menendez are outside of the U.S. So it's not just an American thing, but it's all over the world. And many of them are also abuse survivors themselves.
That's really remarkable. Mm-hmm. Here's another question from the crowd. What will the family do if the DA's office continues to delay the resentencing hearing? And the second question is, can the brothers demand to be released together at the same time?
Well, the first question I want to address, that the latest resentencing delay for the resentencing hearings is as a result of the fires in Los Angeles. They are hugely empathetic of what is happening. We are hugely empathetic of what is happening to the people in Los Angeles and all of the thousands of people whose lives have been upended. So Erik and Lyle are keenly aware of what is happening, and nobody is suggesting that this latest delay was anything other than related to the fires, and the priority is, of course, to keep Los Angelenos safe. So I want to say that. As far as them making demands to be released together, I don't know that that's in the realm of possibility. They will, if the judge decides to go with the original sentencing recommendation from the past DA, from Gascon, brothers will have to go to separate parole hearings and will be judged separately. So maybe they will be released around the same time, maybe they won't.
To piggyback on that, this is from a different person. It says, how do you stay hopeful when so much happens around the case that constantly seems to be pushing it back?
It can be tough sometimes. However, remember that 2 years ago, there was no hope. There was life without parole. That was it. We were facing the rest of our lives with them behind bars. So now there is hope. And yes, it does seem with the Menendez case, that there seems to be a constant flurry of extraordinary circumstances, let's call it that. But we have hope, and I have hope, and I have great faith that if the latest DA, if District Attorney Hochman does what he says he's going to do, which is take a deep dive and review everything and treat the case with attention as an individual case and not a blanket situation, then he will come to the obvious conclusion, which is that they deserve to be resentenced.
What do you think about the world today will be the hardest for the brothers to adjust to when they are released? I'll give you a chance on this one, Robert. Or both of you, actually.
I think that Erik and Lyle Menendez have both become remarkable men. They're very different, as I said, than the young guys I met at the age of 18 and 21. I believe they'll be an asset to any community they choose to live in, and I think they will devote their lives to helping other abuse survivors.
I worry they have not lived in the age of social media, nor were they celebrities before. So that comes with a lot of attention. Sometimes it's wanted, sometimes it's not, and I worry about that. I hope that people will let them live private lives and let them do the good work that they've started.
I want to give each of you an opportunity to freewheel a little bit and talk about what would you like to most communicate to everyone here today that might be missed or might not have been out in the mainstream media or the documentaries, or what is the one piece that you'd like folks to walk away with the knowledge of?
Going back to what I was saying about the media was so different 30 years ago, and Erik and Lyle were being portrayed as a pair of greedy rich kids. That was never the case. They were from a wealthy upper class family, They had always spent a lot of money. And in August of '92, the LA County DA's office went to a grand jury with evidence of murder for financial gain. And they presented that evidence over the course of a week. And the grand jury did not indict the brothers on those charges. And yet, the DA's office knew that the media loved that story. Greedy rich kids kill Haji and Harriet, and that was never the real story. And even though they didn't get an indictment on those charges, they continued to push that story because they knew the media liked it. And so I think that's one of the biggest myths of the Menendez case, is that they did this for the money. That was not the case.
I hope that they get seen as the people that they are today. So much of the media coverage, even today, you'll see the pictures are from when they were kids, the 18 or 21, or during the trials when they were in their 20s. There is the constant reliving of the offense, of the crime, of the days before, of the weeks after. There isn't enough attention on the men that they are today and how they have spent the time in their lives and the differences that they have made, including developing programs aimed at helping the most vulnerable people around them. I would like the world to know them as the men that they are today, because it is really stunning.
Thank you. If anybody has any additional questions, please write them out and hand them over to Cecily, and we can ask. Let me ask you both, what is next? I know, obviously, March 20th and 21, that's right on your radar. What kind of, it's hard to think outside of that, I suppose, but if you do, what kind of, when you think, 2 years down the road, not just as it pertains to the brothers, in your case, Robert, what other projects are coming down the pike, and what other kind of ways are you thinking of impacting change?
Are you speaking about the Menendez case or in general?
You just in both, actually. Yeah, in general, I was thinking if there are any other projects.
Well, I'm actually working on a new book, totally unrelated to the Menendez case. Good story. Can't tell you yet. I will
Okay.
in the future. Stay tuned. But what's important about Erik and Lyle Menendez is that this case needs to end. They need to be sent home to their family. They've been in jail for long enough. We really need to examine what is the theory, what is the purpose of sending people to prison. Do we want to lock people away and never let them out, or do we want to see if they can be rehabilitated and reintegrated in society? And I think Erik and Lyle Menendez are the poster guys for people who have changed their lives and should be allowed out.
And did I read correctly that is part of the consideration, that this resentencing, the part of what
Yes.
they're looking at is, has rehabilitation occurred? Is that
Yes. Basically, the simple way to look at the parallel tracks, the resentencing only deals with their life since they entered the California prison system, and whether or not they have become rehabilitated. The habeas corpus petition deals with the new evidence, and we'll go back and re-examine whether that evidence could have made a difference at the time that they were on trial in the 1990s.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let me ask you, what do you see, 2 years out from now?
Hopefully I'll have Lyle and Erik out. Yeah, so let's hope for that. Something about Team TikTok over here. Yeah. Something that has been so amazing has been not just the support for Lyle and Erik, but the number of people who have chosen to reach out to me with their own stories of sexual abuse in their lives, men and women. And the men in particular are so passionate about this advocacy, because they will tell me, like, I feel like you're fighting for me. Nobody believed me. And that has been very heartwarming. So I would, not just heartwarming, but just powerful, personally powerful in my life. And that is something I want to lean into, is, is continuing advocacy for the survivors of sexual abuse and hoping to give them a broader platform.
And one interesting factoid was that when Lyle Menendez testified in the first trial, every day he was on the witness stand, he carried a letter in his pocket from an abuse survivor. And so he's been, the majority of their mail back then was from people that said, nobody believed me when I was a kid and I was trying to, complain about what was going on.
Well, I have to tell you, when I read the letter that Erik wrote to Andy in your book, now how many years ago? I don't do math, but
right.
I think 2018 was a while ago, and it was so chilling to just think about a young person writing that, and just the fact that it was a letter that was written. It wasn't a text. It was actual. They were writing letters. When you came across that and saw that and looked at that letter, what was that like for you as a journalist?
That was a smoking gun moment for me. When I saw that letter, I said, well, this is a very important, potentially very important piece of evidence in the case. And
to be clear, let me interrupt to say that that letter was written several months prior to the actual...
9 months prior.
9 months prior, okay.
And actually, I'd like to read a couple.
That would be
paragraphs,
great, yes.
If you don't mind.
Thank you. Let me have it bookmarked right here.
These are 2 paragraphs from the letter that Erik Menendez wrote to his cousin, Andy Cano, in late 1988. It starts out, Mom isn't doing too good. It's like she's here physically, but mentally she's just like gone, if you know what I mean. She freaks out over nothing. I feel bad for her. I don't know why she puts up with Dad's shit. At times, I wish I could talk to her about things, Someday, especially Dad and I. But the way she worships him and tells him everything, I'm so afraid she'll tell him whatever I say. I just can't risk it. And then the next paragraph in the letter goes, I've been trying to avoid Dad. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. I can't explain it. He's so overweight that I can't stand to see him. I never know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in. I need to put it out of my mind. I know what you said before, but I'm afraid. You just don't know Dad like I do. He's crazy. He warned me 100 times about telling anyone, especially Lyle. Am I a serious wimpus? I don't know if I'll make it through this. I can handle it, Andy. I need to stop thinking about this.
We should be noted that Andy was called a liar when he was testifying in his early 20s about knowledge, and then struggled with addiction, and ultimately we lost him in 2003.
That is very powerful, and I'm struck by the word wimpus, because it just takes you back to that time. It takes me back to that time. I'm about the same age as the brothers are, so, I have to say I cannot thank each of you enough for sharing your story, sharing your time, coming here, and telling all of us about your experiences. And I recognize how particularly hard that's got to be, and will continue to be. And so thank you for that. Okay, I think we've still, we're good. We've got time for a few more. To Robert, how did you gain the trust of Lyle after his own account of not trusting you when he spoke to Norma Novelli. Oh, this is a really good, whoever gave this question, see, well, let's trade spots. You should be up here. This is a great question. Excellent. Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
Let me tell you a few things about Norma Novelli. Norma Novelli was somebody who Lyle met. She published a newsletter that was circulated in prison. It's called Mind's Eye. And Lyle Menendez wrote her a letter about an article she had written. And she became a very close friend of his. And each of the brothers had friends who were acting as switchboard operators. The brothers would call each of their friends at night, and then the switchboard operators would make three-way calls to whoever they wanted to talk to. And so for several years, Norma Novelli was, pretending that she was a good friend of Lyle's, and she was surreptitiously recording all of his phone calls, and those were calls being illegally recorded because California is a two-party state, like most states. And Norma Novelli actually put out a so-called book in 1995, and the promotion. The book was not a book; it was simply a series of transcripts of phone calls. And when the book quotes are on it, was released, the promotion said, "These are the tapes that will put Lyle Menendez away." And everything you need to know about the tapes is the tapes were never admitted as evidence in the second trial. And Norma Novelli, showed the true meaning of her friendship, which was, doing this horrible thing where she released these transcripts. And I believe that Norma may have actually had a crush on Lyle, which was strange because she was 54 and he was 25 at the time. And I just wish she would go away.
And how were you able to flip that with Lyle and say, hey, I'm not,
well,
she and I are two different people?
In one of her transcripts, Lyle was saying something about me that was negative, and that was one phone call that he had. I've known him for 35 years, as well as Erik, and like any relationship, over a period of decades, you go in and out of different periods. But I wholeheartedly support them, and I believe I know as much as the lawyers. I probably know maybe even more. But Lyle's a great guy, Erik's a great guy, and as Anamaria was talking about earlier, they are not the cartoon characters that you see portrayed in Saturday Night Live sketches. They are real people to us, and we know the difference between who they are portrayed as and who they really are.
I appreciate that. This one's for you, and I've been calling you Anamaria. Is it Anna or Anna?
Anna.
It is Anna. Okay, thank you. I got a bum steer on that. I apologize.
That's okay.
Anamaria, your mother's testimony in the penalty phase of the trial was very moving. Has your family ever discussed their interactions with the prosecution, particularly in regards to the death penalty?
Well, my mother has nothing nice to say about them. Yes. And if you know her, you know that she has no qualms in expressing herself that way as well. Obviously she never wanted that. She always supported them. She loves them desperately. That is her greatest wish, is to see them released.
And it's unfortunate that we didn't have a camera in the courtroom at the second trial, including the penalty phase, because Anamaria's mother, Terry, was an incredibly powerful witness, standing up to Prosecutor David Kahn, who was a very arrogant person. And Terry Baralt said, you know, we've had enough killing in this family. We don't want anything to happen to Erik and Lyle.
Yeah, the way they spoke to her was terrible. So disrespectful for a woman who had already lost family.
It seems, yeah, that I can see that. I can imagine feeling just almost like victimized all over again, to a certain extent. Okay, well, with that, thank you. And one last opportunity for any additional points. We can't get you to break some news with what's coming, your next project, no? Okay.
Not today.
Not today.
But I will say that this updated edition of my book came out in September. I hope to release another updated edition when Erik and Lyle Menendez are free men, because that's what should be the final chapter of this story.
Wow. Well, that's certainly something to look forward to. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I do want to say that I hope that from the family's perspective, we are really hoping that the judge will make his way to immediate release with manslaughter, as opposed to the current recommendation that is for just to take away the without parole and send them to the parole board. You just mentioned how my mother was traumatized again with that situation, with the penalty phase. This has been 35 years of trauma for this family. 35 years. It's enough. 35 years is enough. It's more than any family should have to go through. My mother has suffered more than any woman should have to in her life. Same with Aunt Joan on the other side, Joan Anderson. So the sooner we can get this done, the happier that we will all be as a family. We were desperately seeking closure. So that is really our message.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I've got a few announcements. Before we conclude, I do want to take a moment to thank our headliners team, co-leaders Donna Lewan Leger, Lori Russo, Jen Judson, our club program manager, Cecily Martin, Scott Martin, and club executive director Didier Soggy. Thanks also to our guests, Robert Rand and Anna Marie, for sharing their insights with us. We hope that you'll accept these much coveted National Press Club mugs as tokens of our appreciation for you being here today. Right. Thank you. Pack those up and bring them back with you, back out west. Finally, we want to thank all of you who've taken time to be with us today, our audience. We hope you'll join us tomorrow for a conversation with former CBS News correspondent Marvin Kalb, who will discuss his new book, A Different Russia, Khrushchev and Kennedy on a Collision Course, at a virtual headliners book event at 2:30 p.m. That event will be broadcast live stream on the National Press Club's website. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And also, is it possible for you to sign some books? If anybody, if you're interested, you can grab some signatures.